Welcome to Telltale Books. This video, I have to backtrack on an author that I've already kind of started with Emily, going through his work, because I learned some things about him that I didn't know before. The author is Stanley G. Weinbaum. The things I didn't realize were that he wrote some works before he started writing science fiction. He wrote, I don't know how many poems, but there are 9 poems that have been published in recent years in a book called Lunaria and Other Poems, published by the Strange Company. And I was able to get a hold of a copy of that publication as a PDF online. Apparently it's public domain, and so you can get it on archive.org. So I got a hold of a copy. It's a very short book. It's 37 pages, I think, and it's only 9 poems. I'm guessing he probably wrote more poetry than that, because he started out wanting to be a poet professionally at a time when he was studying at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He was writing poetry and publishing some of it. Not sure where he was publishing it, but he was writing poetry from like 1921 to 1923. That I know for certain. Whether he wrote any other poems, I don't know. I haven't heard of any. I haven't found any other than these 9. So I'm just going to kind of talk about all of them, because none of them are anything major. They're interesting to somebody who really likes Stanley Weinbaum. It's interesting to see that he did this, because of course we're all familiar with the science fiction stories like A Martian Odyssey. The stories are mostly kind of fantastic. Personally, I consider them to be better than anything that H.P. Lovecraft wrote, because I'm not a big fan of Lovecraft's poetry. I really love his short stories, not a fan of his poetry. I've been reading a lot of it, haven't read it all yet. I am going to get through it all, but the majority of it just isn't very interesting. And I feel in his poetry is where you start to really see his racism coming through more than it did in any of his short stories. So I really don't like Lovecraft's poetry. Weinbaum's poetry is kind of more what I wish Lovecraft's poetry would have been. It's fantasy, some it's probably more like Clark Ashton Smith or Robert E. Howard than H.P. Lovecraft, really, because it is fantasy with kind of Arabic overtones. Some of it is very blatantly Arabic in setting, and most of it just talks about characters that are in love with princesses and in these exotic places. They're not bad, but they're not great. And so I did kind of enjoy reading these. Like I say, it was very interesting to learn this side of Weinbaum, having known his science fiction stories, and finding out that he was writing way back in 1921. His first science fiction story was published in 1934. I also learned that Weinbaum wrote a whole novel. It's not science fiction, but he wrote a whole novel, and it was actually serialized in newspapers. So it was owned by or published by the King Features Syndicate, which is probably best known for syndicating comic strips. But this wasn't a comic strip, it was a novel. And the novel was distributed in parts throughout all the different newspapers that King Features Syndicate managed. Well, the novel has been collected together as a novel in more recent years and published. I personally decided to get an ebook version of it, so I have that, and I will read that and do a video of that next for my next Weinbaum, and then I'll get back on track with his science fiction, Going to Flight on Titan. So how this changes things with 10 works having been written and published before A Martian Odyssey. A Martian Odyssey then becomes number 11, and Valley of Dreams, which we already did a video of, becomes number 12, and then the next science fiction work will be number 13, and it bumps up his total bibliography up to 44 works, which is interesting. So, like I say, the only people that would really want to hunt these poems down and read them, I would imagine, would be somebody like me that is fascinated by Weinbaum and just wants to read everything you can get your hands on. Otherwise, not a whole lot of reason to read these poems. Like I say, they're not great poems. They're just okay. But they are kind of Weird Tales style fantasy poetry, and the sort of thing that I wish Lovecraft would have written more of. So I'll stop this video at that. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Weinbaum, which you most likely did not know. And leave comments, like us, and subscribe to us, and come on back for more. I'll see you in the next video.